Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host this week. I'm Samantha Studebaker-Carl, broadcasting to you from Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm here with my good friends Stan and Lori, Catherine, Karen, and my daughter Angel. And today we're going to be talking about or continuing our discussion of Your Soul's Plan by Rober Schwartz. You know that. And last week we began talking about chapter 7. And we were kind of discussing Jason's accident where he had jumped into a pool and become paralyzed. And then, his thoughts on, and then the information from the other side, from the channels and the mediums that were talking about why he would have done that as a pre-birth plan, why he wanted to, because he crushed both of his neck vertebrae and caused them to become quadriplegic. So we'll finish in that discussion, and then we'll move on to the next section of the chapter this week. So, but before we get going, I want to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves. And for those of you who are watching, if you'd like to participate, we'd love to have you. And you can find us if you go to mindsetmasterycollective.com. That link will take you directly into our Facebook group where you can connect with us and join the discussion. So with that, guys, jump out, introduce yourselves, and then we can get our chat going.
Good morning, it's Catherine in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and I'll go ahead and introduce Lori Emmons as well from Denver. Good to be here.
Dan Sislick in Las Vegas, Nevada. Looking forward to getting into the chapter some more and ready to hear what everybody has to share.
And I'm Kieran Loha from Mesa, Arizona.
I'm Angel Studebaker, all the way in South Carolina.
Awesome, guys. I'm so glad that everybody could join us this week. I thought I was going to have to work and I was going to be driving again, but luckily that didn't happen. So I'm able to be here with us from my home office, which is, I enjoy doing that so much more because I can really have the book in my hand and be reading right out of it, which is nice. So I know I was listening to the second half of this chapter talking about Christina. I was hitting the bookmark button on my Audible as I was driving down the road, and oh yeah, that's a good point. I got to remember that, And so this book has just been absolutely, I don't know, mind blowing. I started out with it going, oh, I don't know about this whole pre-birth planning idea, and I was really skeptical about the whole premise of it. And and now after having read it, so much of it has resonated with me. I'm just like, oh my God. I'm just, even if it's not literally the true, it feels like this is a very good possibility in some way, or and I know that we've talked about things before where we're just like, we don't know what's really going on. And if this can help us have more serenity and peace and just internal understanding, or can help us grow spiritually or in our mindset or whatever, then I don't see the harm in exploring it, right? And I mean, I don't see the harm in exploring anything when it comes to spiritual growth and understanding, because it helps us. And I think that when we learn something new, it helps to expand our minds and expands us spiritually. And I love this idea. It's pretty amazing. So last week we talked about Jason having his accident. He jumped in the pool, crushed a couple of vertebrae, which caused him to become a quadriplegic. And when he was unconscious, he kind of experienced all of this peace and tranquility, and he didn't say specifically that he met with his spirit guides or anything like that, but the feelings that he had when he was on the other side, and he had said that he kind of felt like he had a choice where he could either continue on into the death, or he could come back and and continue in his life. And he had decided to choose to stay here in his life, because he wanted to be of service to other people, and because he had so much peace when he wanted to he felt that, and he wanted to bring that to the world. And so that was just really inspiring in a lot of ways. And I think that I don't know about you guys, but I've seen a number of people that have come forward in the world now that we have social media and YouTube and all of the Instagrams and everything else that there is to express ourselves. And I've seen so many people, excuse me, so many people that have huge handicaps that are just inspiring the world like never before. And I'm just so excited about that. And so that's kind of what he's been doing. So, but I know, Dan, you had some thoughts on this, on that section before we move into the new one. And I had a section I wanted to read out here also, or anyone else who wants to jump out on that.
Yeah, mine, and I don't know if anybody else has thought this, or maybe it's just something that's more because of where I'm coming from personally. Um, I'm still kind of struggling through some of this, and but the thing that came up to me is okay, um, when he was, when they were talking like with the mother and everything and the pre-birth stuff, and she was saying no, she didn't want to go through the experience of having him die as a child, and a- and the way I was looking at it is when you're in the other side, to me it's, I know that the souls have their presence and everything like that, but if the idea of moving and growing, and I know they can kind of, or I feel like they have a say in how far they progress, I guess, with most of them wanting to progress to the highest level or the next level or to move on to that next level. But it seemed like, when she was saying, no, I couldn't handle you, passing away as a child. But on that side, to me, even though it's love and everything like that, how would the personalness come into play so much if they're there to help support and they're on their own journeys? And to me, it gave it a more humanistic side of it feel than it to me than what would be more there. And I'm, made it feel like, well, now we're just projecting human stuff on it, and maybe that's the way we would look at it, to put into context. But it just didn't add up to me. It just didn't make sense that if you're over there and if you're here supporting him on the journey or being that player in that and agreeing to be in that, and they even speak about that the guide, or yeah, the guide that was channeling said that this was to showcase that you still have your personal choice and your personal say in those things. But I don't know, something still does not add up to me from on that side perspective where she goes, no, 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 I couldn't it it just seems too personal then at that point to me there. I can understand it here where we come and we forget, and we're so wrapped up in what we're here and what we're about here on earth. eh, but that was my questions that I had brought up for me personally.
Oh, I was trying to find my mute button there for a second. Um, when I read that part, I kind of had a similar feeling of like, wait a second. But then I remember when they were talking about how on the other side, um, oh, hang on, there's the link. If you scroll up, if somebody can scroll up in the Facebook chat to just copy the link and paste it back down for Sandy.
It's not a link she needs. She's intermobile. She's gone through the link. It's asking for some code.
Oh, okay.
I've
I
never been
think
asked for a
just
code.
I haven't either, but I think it might just be these six letter or 7 letters at the end of the link. Let me stick them in. Hold on. Let me
She's in the Facebook group.
Okay, let me pop over there real quick. If somebody else wants to comment while I'm doing that.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt you there.
I'd love
Yeah,
to hear what Catherine has to say. Oh, sorry, Catherine. I was going to say I'd love to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, I totally get you guys, because that was my first, I had a little rub on that as well. And I think with any book, with any spiritual text, with anything that has to be processed through the human mind to be written, to be presented to us or whatever, I think there's always the possibility of projection of, human stuff. On the other hand, I also believe that just because you're on the other side, it doesn't mean that you're just this, I do believe that the personality persists. And I say that because my grandmother still very much, when she visits me, it's still very much her and her personality. It's not my grandmother who has gone to heaven and is now this being. She is still her with all of her herness, and that's all I'll say about that. But so I think that I don't think everybody walks around in duality like we do here, or floats around, since we don't have bodies over there, so we're not really walking around. But at the same time, I think you definitely understand love and compassion on that side. And if so, why would you not have compassion for what you're getting ready to take on? That's part of free will, is understanding, okay, you understand that's going to hurt like fucking hell. And are you agreeing to do that? Yes, I am, because I love this person so much, or I want to help the world in this way, or whatever. But I don't think free will is just agreeing to whatever comes up necessarily. I think it's, choosing a course of action, understanding how that would affect us and the results. Hi, Sandy, made it. And agreeing to that. So that's how I kind of got past that little rub myself. Hi, Sandy.
But that takes me back to my
Oh,
question.
sorry.
Sorry.
Let me share
Sorry.
what I was thinking, Dan, before you add.
Okay.
So in one of the previous sections or further, I don't remember where it was, they talked about in the pre-birth planning sessions that the soul would put on the costume, if you will, or the personality of the individual they're going to be becoming in this incarnation. And I think that if we kind of look at it from that perspective, because whenever they're talking to them, they also are saying that when it's a spirit guide or the soul of that soul always says we, like all the personalities that I've ever been, we are, this is why we're doing what we're doing. But then when they're in the soul planning sessions, they have their spirit guides over here, and then the group of people who are all part of the soul group all have their personality cloaks on for this pre-planning session. And they have, they're on the other side and they're experiencing all the peace and tranquility, but they also have on the personality, so they experience or know what that person is going to feel like when they're over here too. So I think it's kind of a both kind of a thing when they're in those pre-planning sessions, is because they're talking like, Jason, he's in his personality when he's in the session, and yet he's like, I know I want to do this. I feel strongly about it, even as the person. And he's like, I want to do it when I'm 10. I feel strong enough that I can do it. But yet the mother personality, she's at a different level of spiritual growth when she's in that mother personality. And they talk about how in other incarnations they had different experiences and they handled it differently, and she wasn't ready yet in that personality to have that type of an experience. And I think that's kind of that was what, because yeah, I felt the same way. Dan was like, wait a second, they're on the other side, it should all be peace and rainbows, right? But yet then when they're talking about they put on the cloak of the personality, I'm like, okay, that makes sense why those personalities would have like earth-like feelings. So, or at least the thought process of the earth-like feelings.
Now that you bring that back out and really highlight it that way, because maybe I didn't get it when I was reading through it in the book through that section, but the way you're between what you and Catherine just said helps me grasp it a little more better and can go with that thought process that um because I mean, even like here on Earth, we wear just different masks, so to speak, depending on the type of people and what work. We have this one personality at work. We have this, we have that with our friends, and so we even split that up here. So for to hear it that way, I can better go with that. I'm still not sure I fully am there, but I can go. Okay, I can understand that what you're saying there. Next,
I feel like one of the biggest things that what's the word I'm looking for? When we look at a book like this and we're like, we planned this all out, and we're here and we're going, why would we do this to ourselves, And uh, I think it's just really interesting because there's so many conversations that Robert has with the soul of the individuals and the spirit guides and the leadership council, and of why the why that we do these things. And I think that I think that it's just it's really interesting. But anyway, I wanted to read this section there's actually the whole end of this particular section. I think everybody should read through because there's a lot of great information on the kind of the why about a lot of it. But I wanted to read just this little excerpt before we moved into Christina's story. This is at the end of Jason's story, kind of the conclusion, if you will. And it says, a recognition of pre-birth planning can bring deep healing, but its place is to accompany or follow mourning, not substitute for it. Loss of any kind, including the loss of physical abilities, heals with mourning, and the mourning process is not to be abbreviated into a pained haste to move from personality to soul consciousness. Far better to sit with the pain and cry should one so choose. Mourning is a gradual process of the heart, best lived softly and with grace, with kindness, gentleness, and compassion for self. With time comes shifts in perspectives. One of the most healing shifts is to realize, as Stacy's spirit guide said, that you are more than your body. This realization makes all the difference. Jason's near-death experience with God confirmed for him that there is something beyond the physical realm. How much greater his anguish if he believed there is nothing more, that he is his body, and that he ceases to exist at the end of his lifetime. Instead, he knows that he is spirit and that he comes from and will return to a place of, as he put it, peace and tranquility and serenity. When a recognition of pre-birth planning is added, perspective may shift even more. With such awareness, this lifetime becomes but one of many stretching into an infinite horizon. And it is not a random, haphazard occurrence filled with meaningless suffering, but rather a well-conceived plan rich with purpose. We who live such plans are more than mere assemblages of minerals. We are our souls, and as souls, we are eternal. And I'd love to just read this whole part, but I know that we're limited on time, and I want everybody to have a chance to to share their thoughts on this. But I encourage everyone just to jump in. This chapter and the last chapter have so many things in there that can help, because the last chapter was about when someone in your soul group, or when someone in your life dies, and how you can, work through that. And this one is if someone has an accident, then how you can work through that. And and that's a huge thing. It's just being able to recognize that we are more than our bodies. And because of that, we don't have to wallow in this anguish of, oh, woe is me, because, there's more to it than this. And what can this mean? And how can what happened to me be something that can help me move forward in my life, or help other people, or what where do I go with this experience? I mean, I don't know. I'm sure everybody has some thoughts that we can talk about. Jump out or off.
Well, this is the first part of what you read is something that I really wanted to bring out today, because as people, and I want to say at the very beginning, I am like triple, quadruple, quintuplet guilty of this. Okay, so that's why I'm bringing it out. As people gain more spiritual understanding, or feel like we do, because we don't really know, right? We have a tendency, and I can say we because I know I've done it and I have witnessed lots of other people do it. We have a tendency to, we want to share what we've learned because it makes us feel so good, right? It like lifts burdens and it gives us hope and stuff. And so we want to share that with people, and we try to share that at painful points in people's lives with all of the best intention. And I mean all of the best intention. But sometimes we can come across as being very cruel without meaning to. But, and I'm going to throw an example up that just happened like day before yesterday that really brought it to my forefront, that I was like, I need to talk about that on Saturday. I'm in a lot of spiritual groups, and a lot of them are like behind the scene talking sort of groups, or they're just nothing but other healers talking. So everybody's, at a very high spiritual understanding, or thinks they are. So there was a lady in the group that wanted to ask a question, and she had lost an adult very close to her husband, several years ago. And then just a week ago, she lost her only child as an infant. And she is trying to deal with that. And some of the responses that came back to her came from a very loving place, and the people were trying to help her feel better. But it was completely negating the experience. And I think as we quote progress spiritually, we tend to there's kind of like this space that goes between us and the world, because we know that like on the higher level as eternal beings, everything is okay and everything's going to pass and everybody's good. And, but we're spiritual beings. We're here playing human parts. Humans have emotions. And if we stuff those emotions for any reason, whether it's because we can't handle them, or whether it's because we're so spiritual that we're above feeling, remorse or guilt or I can't even think of the word I'm trying to say, grieve, we're above grieving because we know that soul is eternal and they really haven't died. That's not helpful when you've lost a child. Losing a child is probably the most painful experience that someone can take on. I mean, that's a hell of an assignment to come into this world knowing that you're going to lose a child. And whether that's physically or emotionally or whatever, you know, if there's space between you and your child, it's so painful. And no amount of spiritual understanding replaces grieving. And I need you guys to hear that, because if you don't express those emotions, if you don't allow yourself to cry, all of that gets trapped in your body. All of that gets passed out onto somebody else. Like, it's not like it goes anywhere. You know how they say energy is always there and it transmutes, but it never goes away? That's how grief is. And we came here, that grief and shedding, actually the physical shedding of those tears, regardless of what your spiritual understanding is, regardless of if you know that your child is still right there with you, you still need to do the human grieving part, because it's important and it's part of that. It's part of what you came to do. It's part of that process. I mean, I came from a town where there was a lot of, quote, spiritually people, you know, at the top of their game. It was the most boring place ever, because nobody could ever talk about anything that was real, because everybody was too advanced, you know, to be human. We're here to be human, guys. Be human. And when you're trying to comfort someone, it's okay, you know, to have understandings, but to just tell someone who's in the midst of severe grief that, you know, there's no reason to grieve because they haven't gone anywhere. I get it. I get what you're trying to say behind it, but let the person grieve. Hold them. That is the time where you need to just wrap your arms around that person and let them cry into you. All right, I'll shut up.
I think there's a section in there. Well, I know there's a section in there where it talks about grief and crying, and that tears wash the soul, and all of that. And I think that's a great reminder, Catherine, because you know, I feel like a lot of times I look at how people are out there in the world, and that was one of the things that I think I highlighted in here specifically of lost my train of thought, but about there's purpose in everything. And so as a person, don't be judgmental towards you know, what you see out there in the world, even though you know it's all passing and it's fleeting and all of that, that it still is happening in this realm, and that there is purpose for it. And then even as a person who maybe isn't quite there yet on the understanding of us being eternal souls, and this is just a fleeting moment, it's that also it's is to try and look at things as, what is the purpose that can be gained out of this, or what is the lesson I can learn out of this, or but the biggest thing that I remember it was talking about was that whole, go through the emotions, because that's part of the growth. And you know, and I think that we have that tendency to try and squash down our emotions, and I don't know why. It's some kind of weird programming thing that, you know, oh, it's wrong. You're you know, you're wallowing in your blah blah blah, you know. And I think that we can do both. We can cry our freaking eyes out, and at the same time experience, you know, okay, think about what does it mean on the grand scale as well, on the eternal scale. Why am I going through this? But yeah, I can go through it, and I can embrace going through it. So but yeah, I find myself sometimes, I see how people are with each other, and it I just want to smack them, you know. I'm like, God, you're just, yeah. But yet at the same time, you know, I read this book and I'm like, okay, well, they've chosen to go through this. They don't know it yet, but they've chosen to go through this, and they're going through it because they're on their own personal spiritual journey, and that's where they need to be in their lives. And I have to remind myself of that every day, because I get all, I don't know, I wouldn't say I necessarily am like judgmental, but I'm like, God, to get over yourself, I don't know. It's just um I feel for him, but and I think that one of the things it talks about in here is that we're all on this kind of journey of learning to have more compassion, learning to have more empathy, learning to have compassion and self-love for ourselves too, because that's a huge part of it, is that when we're going through something and we're trying to squash down those feelings, is that, by doing that, we aren't having compassion for ourselves. We're not having empathy even for our own selves, let alone anyone else. So, did you want to say something, Angel? I saw you popped on here.
Yeah, I think so. That kind of I know it might not go along with it, but maybe that's why empaths reincarnate, or they decide to come back as an empath. Because as an empath myself, I feel everybody's emotions, whether they're trying to suppress it or anything like that. And I can also feel when they need to kind of just talk about it. They just need to feel that emotion. And I just need to be the person who just sits there and listens to them and just lets them kind of just feel it, and if I feel like they want the feedback, I'll give it to them, and generally they feel a lot better. And sometimes I find myself coming across these people who just don't really have compassion or empathy for a lot of other people's feelings, so I'm able to be like, hey, well, maybe you should try thinking about it from their perspective, and I put it into words that they might understand. I kind of I wouldn't say force them, but I make them look at it from their kind of view, so they can see that side, so they can have more understanding as to why it happened or why they decided to do that to them, because anytime I'm come across any kind of issue or any kind of conflict with somebody, I'm always able to see their side of it. So I always have empathy for the whole situation myself, even if I'm the person who's, the victim, and I'm over here empathizing for that person because I can see, I understand it, I understand why they're doing it. So it's hard for me to really get upset about it, but then again, I kind of get upset with myself because I'm like, you let this happen, I don't really have empathy for myself. Like like Mom was saying, where we don't, a lot of people don't, but I have so much empathy for everybody else. But I'm trying to be better with myself. So that's kind of what my thoughts were, is maybe that's why, some people decide to come back as empaths, so we can help everybody else, because we already have this understanding, so we're probably put here so we can help everybody else kind of get that understanding as well too. So, all right, that's it.
Interesting that you say that, because I've never really truly have considered myself an empath, but yet I sense a lot of other people's feelings, and then somehow it gets into me, and then I take on those feelings a lot of times. Whereas when I think, and then I tend to look at it like, well, you know, why do I feel this way, or why am I feeling like this? Like something's wrong, or, when things seem to be okay in my life, but I tend to, and I get brought into those feelings, but then I always tend to try and help people look at both sides of the coin, and maybe not in the exact same way of like how you or Catherine might say them or something like that. But I can always tend to go to the other person, and I can almost always see both sides of the coin. I can put myself in those people's places and see how things can happen. But then when it comes to my own life, at times I don't seem like I can get myself squared away to where I can, understand it better. So that's a interesting thought what you just brought out, and kind of helped me understand me a little bit more too.
I need to jump up here to Lori's comment real quick. She stated earlier in the chat, Lori is in Denver and she has a little trouble muting and unmuting her device. So she just types her questions into the chat for us. So it says, I get people telling me I'm an inspiration and it's great. but it is more of it being my way of handling MS in my human form, so I'm not a depressed or depressing being. And I came back sort of quippy with exactly, Lori, and I just wanted to explain that a little bit. The challenges that you face and the way that you have chosen to face them are what inspires people. The fact that you get up every day and move through your day, and yeah, you might, you know, go through feeling completely depressed and you know, going through all those emotions, and that's good. You need to go through those emotions, but the fact of the matter is you still, you know, you haven't cut your, I hate to say it this way, but you haven't cut your life short because of it. You haven't given up on life. You don't, and no judgment against anybody who's unable to, you know, has MS and is unable to leave their home or whatever. But Lori, I know Lori personally, we're not just Facebook friends. She goes everywhere in her wheelchair. She just recently had to give up driving, which I know just is so difficult because driving is such a form of independence. But there are people in this world who just have, they have their health. I mean, I'm shocked that I talk to people that have never, like, they don't have pain, because I've had pain since the day I was born. I don't know a life without pain. And by the way, I have to say in this chapter, one of the guides is talking about how there are some souls that choose to come and experience pain so that others can live a pain-free life. And I'm going to grasp onto that, because that gives me a little bit of hope that maybe I'm some kind of fucking superhero or some shit, and at least there's a reason behind all this suffering. So I'm gonna thank God, you know, there's a reason behind it. But you know, there are people that don't have any pain. They don't have any physical disabilities. They have like everything given to them, and yet they just have this piss poor attitude and you know, entitlement mentality, and you know, they break a fingernail and they're crying for 3 weeks over it or whatnot. And then here you are dealing with, you know, if any of you know what intention tremors are, when Lori goes to reach for something, it causes a tremor, and that's just one of the ways that MS can manifest. So just to, you know, try to pick up a cup of coffee or a pen or her phone or whatever, you know, that just that is difficult. So think about everything that we do in a day and everything that it takes for you to get through even an hour of your day, Lori. Like, you're so fucking inspiring. Don't play small with me. And she says her pain is emotional and mental, and I can't imagine having the life experience that you're having without having that. I mean, how could anybody go through even just a quote normal life here on earth without having that? So to come into this life with such challenges, and I know you didn't always have them, it was something that kind of came on you, but it's just, life is hard. Being human is hard. And when you're adding all these other levels of challenges on top of it, you know, it's even harder. And I know that as somebody who has physical challenges or mental challenges, you know, we tend to put on our smiley face and our mask and, you know, oh, we're fine and everything's good. And underneath we might be feeling like I could just cut my throat as soon as I get off this call. You know, I mean, literally it can be that big of a difference in the way we're presenting ourselves to the world and the way that we're actually feeling. And we need to stop lying to ourselves, and we need to stop lying to other people. And I'm not saying that we need to just, you know, be moaning and groaning and pissing our life away and playing the victim and stuff, but, you know, find at least one person that you can just say, you know what, today fucking sucks. Like I'm really having a hard time dealing and coping. And hopefully everybody can find at least one person in their life like that. And if you can't, then reach out to one of us on here, because we'll probably, be there for you. Find an animal. Animals have been my godsend, because they just sit there and listen, and I can tell them all my shit, and I feel like I'm not putting it off on another human, because that's another part of it, right? We don't want to feel like a burden to other people, so we try to keep all of our shit to ourselves. Meanwhile, it just keeps piling up to where we all feel like we're going to explode. And when you're an empath, you're feeling that not only for yourself, but for everybody else too. So it's really, really hard as an empath sometimes to separate what's yours, what's somebody else's, what do you need to transmute, and how do you go about that? I mean, it's challenging. And Laura, you can reach out to me anytime of any day, 3 a.m. in the morning. You have my phone number, darling. I'm here for you.
Now, you mentioned pets. I wanted to also mention for anyone who has babies in their lives, because babies are great listeners too. And you can stare into their little eyes, and they're just pure little souls. And they're so close to the other side, and you don't even have to talk to them. You can just look at, and they'll stare right back at you. And I had forgotten that for a long time until, my daughter and my son both had children in the last few years. And and those babies are just, yeah, if you can, a friend that has a baby, or if you have a baby, then they're great listeners too. So I just want to bring that out too.
I have noticed, back to kind of what you were saying, Catherine, about finding somebody to talk to. I've just noticed, just talking about it makes a world of a difference as well too. If you can just hang on, buddy, shh, hang on, I'll fix it. If you can just express or just talk about what you're feeling or what's going through your head or anything like that, it makes so much of a difference. You feel so much better because it's out there. You got it off your chest, because most of the time it's because you keep it pent up. You don't talk about it. You just keep it in your head, and you're talking just to yourself about it in your head, and it's not out in the open, and sometimes I find myself talking to myself as well, just out loud, just trying to get it all out of my head, because sometimes it's so much, because I do forget sometimes, some of what I feel is, from my husband, because he works at a dealership, and he gets super stressed at work, so, and his feelings are big. They just like roll off of him. So he's got such big emotions and such big feelings. So when he comes home, it's like I have hit a wall of stress and frustration, and sometimes it's hard to forget that. So I also feel like when I'm at home during the day by myself, I'm just talking about it, and I just talk and talk. Sometimes I'm talking to the kids, but most of the time I'm just talking out loud to myself. I feel like that helps as well too. You can just get it off your mind, just say it out loud. It helps just to say it out loud at the very least too. But also talking to somebody when you also have your own big emotions, and you're dealing with your own emotions, it also helps to talk to somebody about it too. Whether you need some other input, or you just need to get it off your chest because you just need a vent. It just helps just to talk about it, really. I've noticed that a lot over the years, because I used to keep it all pent up, and I was depressed for a long time, and because I didn't understand that I needed to talk about it, because I just wanted to keep it all up, because I always told myself, I'm like, you sound crazy, nobody's gonna listen to you. You said, why, you're irrational. I could see myself irrationalizing, so like I was trying to make sense of it to myself. Like I understood why I was being irrational. So like I got it. Why do I need to talk to anybody if I already understand it myself, So then like I started really sounding crazy to myself. And I'm like, nobody's gonna really listen. Everybody's gonna think you're crazy. But once I started just talking about how I was feeling, just trying to get it off my chest, it really helped me out a lot. I have definitely been a lot happier just talking to somebody, anybody, and most of the time you'll find everybody's willing to listen. If you're like, hey, I need a vent, they'll be like, all right, sure, whatever. So that's all I had to say. So.
I'll hop out. Good morning. Yes, totally. Talking is so healing or sharing. It's reminding me sometimes during normal times, we'd have like women's circles here where we could, go around the circle and share, just whatever's on our heart and on our mind. And it's always so healing in a community like that, to be able to share and just be heard and seen. What was I going to say? I wrote down some notes here. You were talking earlier about, I guess, Catherine, about, in these spiritual communities sometimes and giving advice. Maybe that's overstepping somebody else's boundaries. And, and I think that's such an important point. I remember, I feel like most of my life I've never been one to give advice. Like I'm a good listener and I'll listen to people, but I'm never one to say, well, this means that and this is what you should do. Just letting them share is the healing right there, and their soul and their journey knows what to do, I believe. Unless they outright are asking me for advice, then, maybe I'll say something, but it's usually very broad, like still that it's their journey. But yeah, I know I have a good friend, and if I'm speaking something on my heart to her, she tends to do that, like put in like, well, this is that, or the spiritual, her spiritual view on it. And I'm like, girl, I don't want to hear these views. I just am talking. I just want to talk. I don't want the advice. I don't want the, well, this, blah, 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 maybe you should do this. No, I just want to share. That's it. So I know it can be annoying, yeah, when you're going through your process and somebody's sharing, because a lot of time it's a projection of their own process that they're putting onto you. It's not even having to do with you. So a lot of times I'm like, girl, just let me share. It was funny too. I was just getting teary-eyed before because I just was processing this last night when I went to sleep, and when you were talking about compassion for yourself, I think that was Catherine as well, or Samantha. Yesterday, a guy I dated probably like, I don't know, 15 years ago, reached out to me because he's opening some health center, so he wanted my advice, and I hadn't seen him in so long, so I'm like, wow. And so we were on the phone for a while, and when I went to bed, like he had a really good memory. He was remembering things about the time we were hanging out and my cat and this and that, and I'm like, wow, you have a good memory. And when I went to bed, it was like that chunk around him and that 3 years, it was like I couldn't remember a lot of it. And I'm like, oh my God, what happened in those 3 years? Like, where was, so I was piecing it all together. Was that before acupuncture school? Was that during? And then I was dating another guy before that, and I was trying to get all the pieces together, and I got it together, but I was seeing all this darkness there too for me. I mean, it was during a time when I was drinking a lot, blacking out a lot, so chunks of my life were off, and like, what happened? So I was for like an hour before bed last night, like going and putting the memories back together, and the last thing before I went to sleep was remembering to have compassion for myself, or, whatever that was, whatever that time. And, I'm grateful for that he did call me, and I was able to open those memories again and piece it all together. So it was interesting, and it was like, oh, wow, like him calling helped me piece a piece of my life together that I pretty much forgot about. So I'm grateful for that, and just wanted to share that, so thank you for listening.
That was kind of like grieving in reverse, you know, putting back together the pieces of the things that you grieved at that time. I lost my roommate Thursday morning. It had taken about 3 or 4 days of her family gathering around her closely. I was really thinking about, I think probably in chapter 4, um, the 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 counsel was to have yourself surrounded by a lot of loved ones, you know, when you pass, because that makes things better for you on the other side. And I was thinking, you know, I know that you've heard me joke about this before, but I've, you know, not had preparations for like a casket or anything like that. So I would tell my oldest son, who always had this kind of sense of humor with me, that he could find an acid bath, which I learned later was really expensive also, or he could do a go out where the sharks gather. And, you know, there's just a lot of things that we could laugh about. And then reading about that, I thought, well, I better get some people together around me. And I've been, you know, far enough away from my family that it's really kind of a pain, you know, to gather people together. And the two people that have passed that's happened with here in this home are both 89 years old. They both came in the same day. I know I mentioned that the other one had survived Hiroshima, which I think is a really big deal. You know, I'm sure there were a lot of people who survived Hiroshima, but in terms of being alive at this time, I don't think that there are. And of course, I didn't dare say to her, please tell me what it was like. But I was so curious to want to know what it was like. And she had a couple of daughters. They would occasionally come. I would occasionally see one slip in and out. But with this family, and of course it had to do with my room because it was my roommate, they had just like 3 generations of family that were coming and piling on in here. And it's not that big a space. And the last night, 2 of them spent different times in my bed, and I slept out on the couch. But I was thinking as you were talking, you know, she had lost her eyes pretty much. She could see. I didn't know that she couldn't see better than she could, but she had decided rather than have cataract surgery, she would just leave her eyes where she couldn't really see. That's why she looked at the picture on my phone, and I said, can you see this? She said, yes. Is that you? When it was a tortoise. We laughed at that for 2 weeks. She had lost her hearing. One ear, she couldn't hear anything at all. The other ear, she couldn't hear very well. And that's why I was so frustrated all the time. The TV was always so loud. I haven't worn my hearing aids since I've been here, because you get a clash, you know, when you have 2 things going on. And she had gotten to where she had a sore in her foot that caused her toes to turn black, and she would look at them every day, and she was convinced they were going to take that foot off, and she did not want that to happen. And so as we were talking about the grieving, you know, a person who has those kinds of things going on and thinking about, am I going to die? You know, I think about, am I going to die before all my teeth fall out? Am I going to die before my hair all falls out? You know, things like that, you know, you know, I really really hope I chose some of those things to happen. You know, I really don't want to lay in bed and not have, I mean, she had gotten to the point where she had like probably a fifth as much hair as she normally had. She was a beautiful, beautiful woman, and had a beautiful smile. And I know I was thinking a lot as time was going on. You know, am I gonna live through this or live through that or whatever? And I do think we grieve through a lot of, or not. So anyway, that's my bit for the moment.
I was reminded there when you were talking, Karen, about, wondering if you had um, planned any of these things, or if you were going to have those experiences before you die, or um, and there's a section in, I think under Christina's story, so the second half of this chapter, where they're talking about how um, it's possible that you may have planned something out, but that because you have come to a higher level of growth before you may have planned to, is that your plans can change. And it talked about meditating on connecting with your spirit guide and asking them to look in the Akashic records and let you know, um, or help you to change, or I'm not even sure I fully understand what it was talking about, but if you can go forward in the chapter and look for that part where they were talking about that. I thought that was really interesting, because they had also mentioned that, we come here, we have these plans, but yet maybe the whole world has changed and it's not necessary for us to go through something that we had planned to do, or maybe we need to do something different, and that we can make those changes. I mean, because they keep talking about, yeah, you make the plan, but yet you have free will when you're down here, so you can choose to do it or not do it if you want. So, um, I just thought that was really interesting that they mentioned that, and I've been trying to take some time to meditate myself and just kind of ask those questions of, what is in my plan? What am I supposed to be doing? Or, is that even something I need to do at this point, or have, because, it mentioned also that we could have gotten to the realization that we had intended before even having any kind of thing happen. So, um, I don't know, something to look at or consider. Well, we are at the top of the hour, guys. So I guess we'll talk about Christina's story next week. Um, Anybody have any final thoughts before we wrap up for today?
I don't know if you guys saw the post I threw up in the Facebook page. It was kind of late last night, but if anybody has Netflix, it may be on some other platforms, I'm not sure, but I watched it on Netflix. There's a show called The Gift, and it's about parallel universes. And so it fits right into what we're talking about. And it like I've always claimed that time is happening consecutively, not linearly. So, it makes sense. And then something else, which we'll talk about next week, that this chapter brings up, is the subject of walk-ins. And if you're not familiar with that term, that's basically, let's say that Sandy's still in the spirit world and I'm here, and I somehow managed to finish all my lessons. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go home, but hey, this body's still good, but I'm going to check out. And then Sandy says, well, hey, it would help me to come in an adult body instead of a baby body. I can get right to work, to finish my lesson. So I'll just step into your body there. And there are books out there written about these types of accounts, and it's extremely bizarre to read about some of these. So that's something you might want to Google this week before we come back to talk about it next week. And check out The Gift if you get a chance. Love you guys. Thank you so much.
Okay, I guess I'll wrap it up for today. Thank you, everybody who has participated today. I love you all so very much, and I have so much just absolute internet virtual hugs coming out to all of you. And, yeah, I love you guys. Um, so with that, guys, so for those of you who are watching, if you want to connect with us, go to mindsetmasterycollective.com. That is the link to get you into our Facebook group where you can connect with each one of us. You can connect with any of our other members. And if you want to participate with us on the Saturday Morning Mastermind, then by all means, give us a shout and let us know that you want to do that. And we'll invite you in. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.